Afternoon and welcome to Georgia DNR's Lunch and Learn webinar. I'm Emily Wingo of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources Floodplain Unit. First, a little housekeeping. We are in listen-only mode, so please make sure your mic is muted. If you're having any Wi-Fi issues, you may want to turn off your camera and any other programs you may have running. Please make note of the chat feature on your screen. Please use the chat for communication as we will not be taking questions by audio. Aaron Kyle of Dewberry is monitoring the chat and will try to help you with any technical matters. We are offering 1 hour of continuing education credit for CFMs. To receive the credit, you must be logged in separately, answer all poll questions during this session, and provide your name and email at the end of the presentation. Please use the radio buttons to respond to the poll questions either in the pop-up window or in the chat box. A copy of the presentation will be emailed to all attendees. Also, a survey link will be provided at the end of the presentation. We appreciate you completing the survey so that we may improve these webinars in the future. We are recording today's webinar and plan to post the video to georgiadfirm.com. All right, with that, let's get started. Today's presentation, the historic 2009 North Georgia floods. Our presenters are Sam Fleming and Kevin Slovell of Dewberry, and Tom Woolsey, the retired Georgia Safe Dams Program Manager. Sam is the department manager in Dewberry's Atlanta office. He has over 30 years of experience in civil engineering and earned his master's and bachelor's in civil engineering from the University of Alabama. Kevin is the former officer in NOAA's Commissioned Officer Corps, where he served as hurricane storm surge forecaster at the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Since joining Dewberry over 20 years ago, he has utilized his expertise in meteorology, coastal science, and remote sensing to support numerous federal, state, and local flood risk and resiliency efforts, which include the response and recovery to the 2009 floods. Prior to retiring, Tom served as the manager of the Georgia EPD Safe Dams program, where he oversaw the safety and maintenance of over 4,000 state-regulated dams across Georgia. As acting program manager during the 2009 flood, Tom was responsible for keeping executive leadership informed while responding to dam owners, concerned citizens, and community officials seeking guidance and support through the disaster by providing resources and expertise to protect and save lives. Under Tom's leadership, rapid inspection and assessment of state-regulated dams was performed, identifying critical situations and needs for emergency repairs. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Sam.
All right, thanks, Emily. Aaron, could you go over to slide 3? All right, thanks, everyone. Yeah, we're going to do a recap here of the September 2009 floods. Hard to believe that was over 16 years ago. Seems like it was just yesterday, but we'll get to that at the end. But back in September 2009, at the time, I think it was on the Thursday before the flood event started, GAPM had its fall conference in Metro Atlanta. And in that, we went to several flood mitigation projects in DeKalb County there, and we'll go over them in a few slides here. But during that entire week, about 2 to 6 inches of rainfall fell over the metro area, which kind of set the stage for what occurred between the 19th and the 21st as far as the rainfall event and the flooding. Just some highlights for the flooding event. Douglas County was ground zero. There's areas of Douglas County that received over 20 inches of rainfall in 24 hours, which is half of a probable maximum precipitation event for the area. We had, you see there, 17,000 residents, 3,500 businesses were impacted, and the Insurance Commission estimated $500 million in damages, which equates to about $760 million in today's dollars. But kind of going back to the event, what set the stage? It was the 2 to 6 inches of rainfall in the prior week, and it led to saturated antecedent moisture conditions. I mean, soil conditions were saturated, so that first inch or so of rainfall didn't really soak into the ground like you would get if it was just your normal conditions. We just added another inch or so of rainfall to the runoff, and that's what led to the flooding. Next. Here are just some pictures of the flooding that occurred. The one that's just really amazing is the top left. That's I-20 over Sweetwater Creek. It's just really hard to believe that see water like that going over the interstate. I believe over top right. I think that's in Douglas County, if I'm not mistaken. But see that just the devastation, the impacts from the flooding. Next. So here we've got Six Flags as the bottom left. So that's where the Chattahoochee River came out of its banks, flooded Six Flags, and then the bottom middle. That's a fairly famous picture. See quite a bit there. That's the downtown connector. Just to see how it was basically just closed off and everything. You got those cars that were stranded. Next. So going back to the GAFM conference, it was there's a project that gets a lot of life, especially around our office here. It's the Drew Valley Detention Pond, which is a really great mitigation project in the North Fork Peachtree Basin, and had worked on it for several years, and it had gone to construction, just been completed that summer. And I believe this is a picture from that Thursday before. And then you see the quote there as the pond did exactly what it was supposed to do during the flood event, and houses that properties downstream that would have been flooded were saved from flooding because the pond did what it was supposed to do and mitigated the impacts. Next. Another mitigation project that we toured during that GAFM conference was down at Jackson Square Townhome, the Jackson Square community. There were 32 townhomes that had been purchased as part of a buyout program. And this is along North Fork Peachtree Creek. And you see there that I believe you got the parking area there. And unfortunately, somebody had left their car there. Next. And this is also at Jackson Square Apartments. It's as you see there, I think that's the parking lot where the bus for the tour was parked just a few days before, and see how high the water came up in North Fork Peachtree Creek. Again, a great a great mitigation project. Next. And stories of luck. So this is, I believe, this is a friend of Sam Crampton. Told, or I believe, friend of Sam Crampton told him this story, and he said that came upon the where the water was going across the road, and just as you see the quote there, figured that if it got up enough speed, the truck would go straight through it. And fortunately, the person was lucky enough to live to tell the tale. And this storm is, I believe, where I first recall, it probably was around, was where I first recall the turnaround, don't drown. Next. Because unfortunately, there were multiple deaths around the metro area. So there you see there this saying, turn around, don't drown. We had there was you see there was some unfortunate events that occurred up in Chattanooga, a toddler being swept away. I believe you know of another person in another area of Metro Atlanta where a person was swept off the road where the road got washed out. So when these floods, for engineers, this is where we can get a lot of data and things get exciting, and we get to see, how projects work, and you have successes and you have failures. But the important thing is when things like this occur, there are real lives that are affected, homes are affected, properties are affected. So it's just another important point about being prepared. Next. So I'm going to turn this over to Kevin to go through the meteorological setup for the storm.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the meteorological setup. As Sam mentioned, there was that antecedent rainfall that fell in the week prior, 2 to 6 inches. But some of the other factors that came really into play, starting somewhere on the 17th, was just this warm, humid air mass settled right over the southeast U.S. So this is kind of a series, Aaron, if you want to click a couple times, you can see the map change. And you can just see the different colorations, the dew point, that lighter green. You're talking like 68 to 72 degree dew point, which, as most of us know, you try to go run or walk in those dew points and you're pretty much sweating as soon as you walk outside. So that just kind of stays there. There's a couple more. It goes all the way through the 21st, I believe. And that's just sitting over the southeast, just feeding moisture into the Atlanta metro region. So next. The other option, the other thing that meteorologists will look at is the precipitable water. You'll always hear it called PWAT. And basically, that is a measure of the total moisture in the atmosphere. If you were to just dump it all at once, that's how much water would accumulate on the ground. So when you're starting to see PWATs up in the 1.5 to the 2.0 range, that's extremely high. And that just gives you that high chance of high rainfall potential. So this is another just kind of series of maps that'll show you just how that high PWAT just sits right over the Atlanta region, sitting even into the 2.0 to 2.1 range. And just to kind of put it into historical perspective, on September 21st, where that red star is, the PWAT's well over 2 inches. The max possible one is just sitting at about 2.25, a little less than a 2.25, about 2.15 inches. So we're looking at this point in time, almost a historical max of precipitable water in the atmosphere. And not only is it from the dew points, but on the next slide, you'll see another reason for this. um, Hurricane Fred was out in the Atlantic a couple days before and then kind of fell apart, continued moving to the west, and was actually on the day, on the 21st or so, was settled right to the east of Florida. And as everybody knows, the counterclockwise rotation sent all this moisture up into the Georgia regions. And the other thing that happened, this is really interesting, is upper level winds. We had Tropical Storm Marty sitting off the Cabo, off of Mexico, just spinning around. But the way up top winds, the 300 millibar winds up at 35,000 feet on the next image, was just basically, you can see the moisture coming in from just south of Cabo San Lucas and just streaming into the Atlanta metro area. So we had a hurricane, remnants of a hurricane off the east coast of Florida. We have a tropical storm off of Mexican coast that was just bringing all that moisture from the upper level winds, and it all converged right over the southeast. That's why we had those PWAT values so high, and that dew point was just absolutely insanely high. On the next slide, starting to go over some of the rainfall observations. This is kind of a focus centered in. We actually do very contracted with a company called One Rain. Whenever you see kind of precipitation estimates from radar, if they just strictly use what the radar is telling them, it's usually way off. So what One Rain was able to do is adjust the actual NEXRAD radar based on local observations. So they took all the different observations you find, plugged into some programs, and they're actually able to get a better estimate out of the radar data as to how much rainfall fell. So from September 15th through the 23rd, this was kind of that antecedent conditions. The maximum was right over Douglas County at 24, close to 24 inches or so. It's extremely localized. As you can see, Douglas County has that 20 inch right there. That's that 24 hours. So they had just around 21 inches of rain. It may not catch it up due to the pixel size, but and then on the next, if you hit again, 4 inches in Mableton. So it's only 14 miles apart if you want to click again. So you can see just how centrally located it was, the maximum rainfall. So one thing that we always hear about the storm, people love to say, oh, this was a 10,000 year storm. And if you go to the next slide, yes, it might have been a 10,000 year storm in certain areas, but definitely not everywhere in the Atlanta metro area. So this is looking at the maximum 24 hours that occurred anywhere between the 15th through the 23rd. So you just kind of see what that max is. And then you look at the Atlas 14. You're able to say, okay, this is between a 25 and a 50 year. This is 1,000. So everything in that purplish area is 1,000 plus year. Atlas 14, I have not found where they publish a 10,000 year, so I'm not sure where people find that at. But everything in that purple is 1,000 plus years. And as you can kind of see just how localized it was over Douglas and Eastern Carroll County. I'm going to send it back to Sam.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Emily, go ahead. And I think just hit once. I believe we got some, yeah, we got one more time. So just to kind of talk about what kind of flows are we looking at here. So we've got two of the USGS gauges. The one on the left, Sweetwater Creek, and then the other one, Dog River, which Dog River, that is going to be Douglas County. So that's going to be kind of the ground zero, as we said, for the rainfall. And you see there how extreme the floods were. They were Sweetwater Creek was about, I guess, is about double the 100-year estimated flow for the FEMA floodplain, and then you've got triple the flow at Dog River. And so the probability of this, that, yeah, like Kevin said, that it may have been in some areas, you could have 10,000 year, but it wasn't like that everywhere. But the other thing to note is, and we'll get to it on the next slide. Go ahead, next. Well, actually going back to the one, sorry about that. Yeah, here's another discharge right here. This is at, I believe this is Canoe and Vinings. This is on the Chattahoochee River. Chattahoochee was, obviously, we had flooding along the Chattahoochee. And then now, and one thing to note, Chattahoochee River is a regulated river, so you got, because of Beaufort Dam up there. So without Beaufort Dam, the flooding along the Chattahoochee would have been a lot worse than this. But you see here on the Chattahoochee, we had the flows there were right around the 100-year discharge. Next. And then kind of just looking through the area, go ahead. Yeah, there you go. Bring all of them in. So looking at the area here, we had, as Kevin said, the rainfall varied across the metro area. And so with Dog River there, the 20.5 inches is about half of the probable maximum precipitation. And I believe Tom's going to talk about what that actually equated to with the flood. But rainfall doesn't always, the rainfall amount in 24 hours doesn't always equal what the flood levels are. It has to do because you got the different things like the soil conditions. So if it's saturated, you're going to produce more runoff than would be expected, because all of these models are built with normal soil conditions. Also, the intensity of the rain, how fast did it fall, how long did it last? So many items there, but what we see there is across the area, Nancy Creek and Buckhead, 5.9 inches, Sweetwater Creek and Powder Springs, 10.5. Then you got Dog Rivers, 20.5 inches. Next. All right, so we're going to also go to talk a little bit about one county, and go ahead and we're going to talk about in Gwinnett, the impacts there. Next. So like for Gwinnett, while there was flooding and roads washed out, I think that Gwinnett, with its proactive stormwater management program, and I'll say I was actually working in Gwinnett for a lot of this time, kind of helped get ready for the response to 2009. So in the 1990s, in Gwinnett DWR stormwater program, the precursor to the current program with RiskMap was a M.A.P mod program. So Gwinnett had actually gone through and was become a cooperating technical partner, and had started a countywide updates to all the flood maps. So we had that going on. We had at the time watershed dams. Gwinnett's got 14 watershed dams and have begun a program to bring them into compliance with safe dam standards for Category 1 dams. And then I'd also started looking towards stormwater utility funding. Next. So the one that I believe paid off, I would say probably paid off the most for Gwinnett was the Watershed Dam Program. So started in 1999, and like I said, there were 14 dams and received grants for some of the dams, but it was about a $20 million program. Most of the dams lacked spillway capacity. So the one that you see there in the picture, that's Wolf Lake, also known as Yellow River Dam number 14. Well, the spillway was just to the, I guess, the spillway would be to the right of the dam, as looking at the dam as we are. So that spillway we abandoned it because it just wasn't big enough, wasn't stable enough, and constructed for overtopping here. So that was that began the program, and Gwinnett went through and at the time of the 2009 floods had not gotten upgrades done on all of the dams, but had gotten them done on the ones that mattered the most. Next. Like say that these were the ones that were completed going into 2009 were Yellow River Dam 14, 15, 16, and 17. You see them there in the center of the county. And so those spillways have been upgraded to provide roller compacted concrete overtopping, which essentially basically on the front side of the dam and at the crest put in concrete. And then what it allowed for was a widened spillway, which increased the capacity. It also provided stability when the spillway flowed. And so what the flood control dams do is they primarily they will provide flood protection up to the 100-year level. And then these extreme storms, that's when the spillways engage. And so that's when you'll get flows downstream. And fortunately, we had completed construction on those 4 because all the spillways flowed and we could have had a big problem. Next. So here's some pictures of each of these. So at Y14, and I'll try to go through quicker because I could tell stories. And I know Tom's still got to talk and he's got lots of stories. But the one at Y14, right before this picture was taken, a father and son had just rowed up on their canoe and we were waving them back. So these are attractive nuisances, but people like to come to them, but you need to stay away. But that morning, I remember the morning, went to work, got to work, called the county and asked, hey, anything going on? The person I spoke to, Jonathan Submergent, said, oh no, I'm going to check in with dispatch, see if we have any calls. Got a call back from him about 30 minutes later, said, oh yeah, we've got Y15 is flowing. Y17 was getting ready to flow. So next. I made my way out to this dam, and somebody going to work had called in and said they saw a chunk of concrete come out of the dam. They were standing out at the road. Well, fortunately, it turned out to be soil. The call as soon as that was said, I think this was the first place I got. We called the design engineer, and I believe he said he didn't know whether to call in the A.P. or call the lawyers. But fortunately, it was just the soil that had come out as you see there where it washed away from the steps. Next. And so all in all, the between Gwinnett County DWR and consultants, we basically mobilized all the dams to observe if they were flowing or not. The 4 dams that we had talked about before, they were the only ones whose spillways flowed. So staff monitored them until the flow stopped, and that was about at noon on the 22nd. And then obviously it's a flood emergency. Gwinnett police were called out, and so a few of these have roads immediately downstream, and they were monitoring the roads. Were still letting traffic go through, but we're monitoring the flow. Next. Some of the other items, because stormwater utility is in place, we had increased our funding. This is a culvert, or actually it's a 50-foot span culvert You got two of these boxes. This is a one-way in, one-way out subdivision over the Appalachian River in Tequila. As you see there, it failed, and we had to come up with a rapid design on this one and and a design basically in the field and maintain traffic because the traffic people had to still get to their houses. We had to construct this under traffic. Gwinnett, all in all, had 25 road closures. Fortunately, they had some already completed designs for 4 of them. And then, like I said, did some emergency designs. Next. So here's some other pictures. The other thing that Gwinnett was able to do is leverage the flood models that have been developed because of the district's requirement for increased flood modeling up to, or floodplain management up to the 100-acre point. We had limited detail models that could be leveraged. So you see where this road was washed out, created a very quick one-sheet set of plans and give it to the annual contractor to go out there and construct. The county was actively coordinating with the local pipe manufacturers to see what size pipes were available. And so the designs were basically, we were designing what we could to best fit to be able to get the roads back reopened. Next. And I mentioned, engineer, we get excited about some items. Well, the one good thing that you can also get with this is high water mark collection. So Gwinnett and some of the Gwinnett County and also the consultants went out across the county and flagged high water marks. Is focused mainly on the Yellow River Basin through the center of the county. And the one thing, this is a great opportunity to get high water mark data. One thing to always caution is to be very careful, look at your surroundings, and do not put yourself in danger to get a high water mark. Next, and we'll turn it over to Tom to go over some more pictures.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity to present about how the dams performed. Next. Before we really get going, there's a little bit of information I need to share with you so you understand some of what I'm talking about. So in Georgia, to be a dam, the structure has to be at least 25 feet tall. That's a vertical height, or store a volume of at least 100 acre feet of water to be considered a dam. Next. Of that, there's category 1, which means if the dam were to fail, there's a probable loss of life. Next. Category 2, on the other hand, means there's no loss of life anticipated. Still could happen, but not anticipated if the dam were to fail. Sam mentioned it a little bit, and you'll see in my presentation somewhere I'll do W/S structure number. Those are the watershed dams. It's important to know those were built specifically for flood control. So they have a lot of freeboard for available storage, and often the emergency spillway would not activate till at least the 100-year storm. Next. Go ahead. A little bit of legalese. All the photos in this presentation were either taken by or provided to EPD Safe Dams program staff, just so you know the source of it. As mentioned, rain impacted everything. You've seen these, but interstates, Six Flags, local roads, everything was impacted with the amount of rain. Next. And with anything, Murphy's always involved. I was the acting program manager. The actual program manager was on medical leave. Next. Typical state programs, we were staff shortage, always are. Did have a recent hire, but that wasn't helping much. The individual was less than enthused about his job, we'll say, and I'll leave it at that. On top of things, I was in the process of buying a new home. My existing home was in Marietta, just a mile or two away from Mableton, where Sam showed it was about 4 inches of rain. My new home proposed at that time was in Powder Springs, where it was about 10 inches of rain. So we had some issues there. Next. Also had some changes in upper management. And so they were very involved and wanted to know everything we were doing. Added certain complexity to it. So Anyway, next. So Monday morning it begins. I'm getting ready to head to work, take my two daughters to school. And I knew it had rained, but I had no idea how much it had rained. And again, I was in an area that didn't get quite as much rain. But as we're leaving, my two garbage cans are being washed down the side of my house into the ditch. And I'm like, ah. Then my work phone calls. And I get a call saying from the drinking water folks saying the Dog River Dam is overflowing. Next. I'm like, that can't be. There are, like, there's plenty of Peachtree Streets. There's a couple of Dog River reservoirs. Maybe they mean the smaller one. So just to be sure, I called the Douglas County Water Authority, and they're like, nope, it's right. Dam 68 feet tall. It was overtopping by 18 inches. Fortunately, just downstream was the Chattahoochee River and not some subdivision or something where it could have been much worse. Interestingly, the dam had just been upgraded to handle the 50% P&P. Part of that upgrade was to put a wall 10 feet tall on top of the existing dam. So you imagine overtopping by 18. So if that wall wasn't there, 11 and a half feet of water going over that dam, the damages could have been much, much worse. So as I indicated, this was the first of numerous calls I got. Next. And this is an aerial view a little later in the day that we got. The waters receded some, but you can get an idea of how much flow is going on there. Next. So finally make it to the office. Next. And had 4 phones ringing almost constantly. My work phone, office phone, personal phone, and the mainline number with calls coming in about issues. Next. As I mentioned, I had a new staff member who was not very enthused and actually added more work to the workload than anything. Next. I was also scheduled to be given training that day to other employees outside of the Safe Dams program. They were wanting training. They couldn't understand why I wasn't going to be able to give training that day. Ultimately, they understood, and we delayed the training until a later date. Next. And as I mentioned, upper management was requesting updates very regularly. So I was trying to keep them in the loop as much as possible. Next. So formed inspection teams, we typically do 2 members to a team for safety, efficiency, a number of reasons. Gotten those teams formed. Next. But the real question was access. As we showed, interstates were flooded, roads were flooded. What do you do? So we made a request and fairly quickly got authorization for a helicopter to fly us. Next. So one of the teams was got up in the helicopter, but the question was, okay, where to? We're getting so many calls. Next. So we decided that West Georgia, Douglas County to Carroll County seemed to be high volume if we were getting the calls. So plotted out path for them to go to look at some of the dams along that way. Next. And about that time, the first report of a dam failing and killing someone comes in. That made it a very bad day to get that report. But next, we'll talk about that. So the call came in for Snake Creek Reservoir Dam. It's in Carroll County. There are concerned residents. It's really, even for decades of the permitting, I could do a whole presentation about some of the history and where the residents didn't want it, but we'll save time today on that. But what you're looking at now is the lake up to the spillways. Right in about the middle, you might see a little black speck. That is the principal spillway tower. And then on either side, you've got spillways flowing. Note the difference in the one on kind of the left, right, and then the left. The left, you see the white capping. That was erosion that was happening. And I'll show you more about that later. Needless to say, this one became a priority to get looked at. I did call Carroll County Water Authority, Matt Wyndham, to see if the dam had failed, what he could tell me about somebody losing their life. Fortunately, he said, I'm standing here looking at the dam. It's still here. It's got about 7 feet to go, but it's still here. So that eased concerns a little bit. Ultimately found out it was another non-regulated dam that had failed. Next. So then got first call about watershed dams. NRCS sent me information about 2 watershed dams in kind of the Carroll County area. Again, these are designed to handle large storm events. You can see this one here, Tallapoosa 20. It's about 24 foot tall. They had received close to 10 inches of rain over a 24-hour period. There was 2 feet of flow measured in the emergency spillway, which is the water that you see at about the middle of the picture, and the dam's kind of in the background. You can also see where the dam is actually overtopping just a little bit in that. So when I got that, it's like, things are getting worse if we've got watershed dams having an issue. Next. So by this time, the inspection team that was in the helicopter was up in the air, and they called and reported to me the first dam that they saw failed, which is this Coursey Lake Dam. Fortunately, it was a low hazard dam and no issues with it. So that was good, but that was the first of several reports we got about failures. Next. This is Mirror Lake Dam, which is kind of right at the Carroll Douglas County line. Had just recently received some upgrades. The spillway is flowing there. That's where you see the water going over the roadway, but functioned pretty much as intended. Some erosion, but that's what you would expect in a storm like this. Next. So then one of the others they went to was Richards Lake, which is part of the Southwire plant. This is aerial view coming in from the upstream end and then over the dam on the right side there, and you can still see the spillway. Next. And there's a view looking at the spillway, and then you can see just downstream the flooding of the plant. They had some pretty extensive flooding there in the plant from all the floodwaters that came through. Next. One of the others that really gave us some concern is Lake Terra Dam, because it's close to 100 foot tall, and there's a number of homes downstream on into Douglas County and all that could be impacted. In the photo on the left, you can see a little indention up near the top. That's the spillway, and then it goes kind of into the trees there, which there on the right, you can see the flow going through the trees and the amount of erosion that was occurring. Next. This is a little Tallapoosa 36, again, another watershed dam. One thing to know on the watershed dams, all of them when they were built had easements that said no permanent structure should be built below the top of dam elevation. As you can see in the photo on the right, that didn't quite happen. So there were a number of homes that got flooded just in that little area there. Next. This is Lake Carroll Dam in Carroll County. It has 2 spillways that are emergency spillways that are flowing. The one near the bottom is functioning fine. The one about middle to upper part of the photo, you can see the different white capping. That's where erosion damage was occurring and damaging the spillway there. Next. And then this is a flood control dam in Fulton County, Little River 38. I included it to show you the impact that utilities in emergency spillways can have. The amount of erosion around the sewer pipe there, and some other utilities that were there. I'll show you another picture in a minute that was also a spillway impacted by utilities. Next. So then Hickory Log Reservoir Dam, it's in Cherokee County, actually sits just above Canton. It was a new dam that had just been built, 180 foot tall, tallest regulated dam in the state. It was currently in a controlled filling situation, so roughly about 2 feet a week would be all that would be allowed. That Monday, it rose over 10 feet from all the runoff. And at one point, it was raising close to 1 foot per hour. So we got a lot of concern. Ultimately, we made the call to tell the owner and their consultant they needed to start releasing water, even if it meant flooding a little bit of downstream. So that they did that, and that helped get it under control. Next. And then this is Small Lake, about 5 acres, plantation subdivision in Douglas County. Reports are because all the flooding, we weren't able to get there on Monday, but reports are that the water came near the top of the dam but did not overtop. Fortunately, small drainage basin. And it's a good thing because you look at the photo on the right side, that is me standing on top of the dam, and you can see the hazards right there. So it could have been a very bad situation had the dam overtopped and failed. Next. But as they say, but wait, it gets worse. So Tuesday, I get reports about, you're good, go ahead, about Pine Lake Dam, which is in Douglas County, excuse me. The picture on the left is the emergency spillway had flowed, which was also a roadway that led up to the top of the dam. On the right is a trailer that was located about midpoint of that spillway. The flow lifted it and pushed it into the trees. There was a mother and a 5-year-old son in that trailer that they had to get rescued. Fortunately, no injuries, but it was a very close call. Next. This is another watershed dam. This is in Paulding County. What you're looking at is the emergency spillway. You can see a number of the utility lines that run through the dam, which we think help propagate things. And just for order of magnitude, you look at the picture on your left, you see the person in the blue shirt. They're holding a 30-foot survey rod right there. So it gives you some order of the magnitude of the amount of erosion. The dam did not fail. It had about 10 feet of soil left before it would have fell through the spillway, but it was a close call. Next. And then, as if I didn't have enough to do, we get a call about Berkeley Lake Dam. It's about 85 foot tall, the city of Berkeley. Many of you have probably heard of it. There's a road downstream and some, we'll say, pretty pricey homes downstream. So real concern. A slough was noted. It's about 32 foot long, 6-inch drop on it. Upper management had enough concern. They sent me out there. We looked at it and said, yep, something needs to be done. So this was another one that got high priority issue. Next. Then also on Tuesday, I got information from Cobb County. This is Laura Lake Dam. It is located above, right near Town Center Mall. At the time, it was a Category 2 dam. We later made it a Category 1. The picture on the left is actually a county police officer monitoring the dam overnight, and that's it overtopping while he's sitting there monitoring it. On the right is the damage. As I mentioned, the dam overtopped, severe erosion damage to the slope. The emergency spillway had lots of damage, and the spillway pipe was damaged. Next. This is another dam in Cobb County, Cochran Lake, that we got information on. On the left is a picture of it overtopping. And then the picture on the right is once the waters receded and some of the erosion that was occurring. Next. And then to go back to Dog River Reservoir, this is after the waters receded. On the left is the wall I mentioned and the overtopping. You can see some of the debris, a little bit of the erosion damage, but all in all, for what happened, minimal there along the wall. The photo on the right is the berm where this wall is, and you can see the extensive erosion damage that occurred there. The consultants for this dam and the recent upgrade it had done went back and did calculations, and they figure that the storm event there was around the 68% of the probable maximum precipitation. Next. This is Willow Pond in Paulding County. This is the spillway head flow, and you can see the amount of erosion damage in it. Next. This is Snake Creek once the water had subsided there. Not a great picture, but you can see some of the erosion there. Off just to the right, the erosion is more severe. The head cut went down 60 feet vertical. So pretty deep cut, and it was close to getting back to the reservoir. So a close call. Next. And then this is Lake Terra that I showed earlier, the 100-foot tall dam. This is where the water was entering where the woods was. This is the erosion damage. The dam is maybe 10 to 15 feet to the right of the edge of the picture there. So the erosion was cutting back, could have been much worse. Next. Then this, we obviously got calls about non-dams as well. Had just finished inspecting dam in East Cobb and was headed to Paulding County, West Cobb area on another dam when I get a call that the State Patrol was getting ready to shut down Dallas Highway because there's a dam with the issue, and DOT was on site. I'm like, well, I'm on the way. Let me go take a look. Showed up, the dam had overtopped, good bit of erosion damage on the slopes. But we looked, and actually it sits really below a little bit of Dallas Highway. And so made the call that even if it failed, it would not impact Dallas Highway, which is good. This is about 2 miles from where my new home is now. That would have been bad. Okay, next. Go ahead. So some summary. There were 96 Category 1 dams that we inspected by October 2nd. 4 of those had overtopped. 46 we know of had an emergency spillway activate, but fortunately no failures. Close calls, but no failures. We then, knowing some of the other areas that got impacted, we sent letters to an additional 61 Category 1 dams. And from that, 10 of those, the information suggested they needed to hire an engineer as well. For reference, at that time, we had about 480 Category 1 dams. So it was about 20% of the structures were impacted. Next. Several watershed dams were impacted, as I've shown. I've seen presentations that noted no watershed dams were built in Douglas County. There were some estimates that had they had watershed dams, the extent of flooding and thus the amount of damages could have been reduced, but that's hindsight. We also had 27 dams to be studied. Those are ones that are Category 2 that we think might be Category 1. We went ahead and inspected those, and as I mentioned, there was 1 or 2 where we wound up making Category 1 following this. Interesting, calls to the office were roughly 60% Category 1 dams. All other situations like this I've experienced through my decades at the program, it was usually Category 1 dams were about 10% or less. So it was a different dynamic there and very interesting. Next. So a couple of lessons learned. Access can be a real issue. Fortunately, we were able to get a helicopter for some of it. Information's not always accurate, as we're told a dam had failed and killed somebody, was the wrong dam. You all probably know this, but you need to document everything. It's good to establish protocol and communications before the event. Fortunately or unfortunately, we'd had experiences with this before, so we had protocol in place. It's also good to identify available resources. As Sam mentioned, they did inspections on the dams in Gwinnett County and all. Similar, we had Cobb County had some people that were experienced with dams, and they handled a lot of it. By those two counties focusing on their dams and giving us information, we were able to focus more on the dams in the West Georgia area. Next. As I mentioned, Murphy's Law can always be in play there, so be expecting it. Bad situations can be made worse in a big situation like that. The internet, valuable resource. We actually, staff in the office, was using the internet some to check reports that we were getting and verify information. So it's a valuable tool. Clearly didn't show all that, had hundreds of pictures, but some people don't understand what an emergency spillway is for. And so that's where you wind up with utilities put there. We even have some dams in the state with horse barns, riding stables, or even houses in the emergency spillway. Next. And as mentioned, utilities in the spillway or the dam itself are not a good thing to do. Next. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sam and appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Tom. Like I said before, it's hard to believe this was 16 years ago. Just a reminder, at least for me, of how old I'm getting. I don't know, Tom, I'm sure feels just as young as he was at that time.
Oh no.
One thing, with advancing social media and just with cameras on the phones, it's just, even though we got some really good pictures back then, I mean, it's just incredible now, just how, with the high resolution cameras, just how much better the pictures are if you go out and get some. And also then with social media, just makes the forensics just easier because so many people are out there taking pictures and making notes of the events. But one of the things that came about of this is, I believe it was the USGS said this was a 10,000 year flood, and a lot of people just kind of wave it off, say, yeah, it was extreme. Well, it wasn't a 10,000 year flood everywhere. It was, and again, we don't really know if it was, and it could have been in Douglas County and areas, but it wasn't like that everywhere in Metro Atlanta. Next. So conclusion, just, this is obviously, that storm was one for the record books, and as talked about before, like in Gwinnett County, with the active stormwater management program in Gwinnett, DeKalb had one, obviously, because DeKalb had been doing buyouts on mitigation. Think about the folks that could have been impacted had they not done Drew Valley, had they not done the buyouts there at the Jackson Square townhomes. Cobb County having the staff to be able to go out, like Tom said, and inspect the dam. So that's active stormwater management programs. That's a really big, important thing to get ready for one of these floods. Mentioned before, if you have an opportunity, get some data, get photos, get high water marks, but make sure that you're safe. And then when it comes to the phones, I forgot to mention this before, but one thing now with your with the geotags and timestamps on your phones makes it a lot better and really good for your location, getting that geolocation of where you took some of these photos. Turn around, don't drown. Mentioned I had never heard that. Probably been around and never heard that until that event. That was and that turned out that was one that could have saved some folks' lives. And finally, for an event like this, have a plan, a personal plan. Like on the personal plan, how do how are you going to evacuate your house? Do you have emergency supplies in case of an event like this? And then a lot of governments don't have this, but some do, and I think it's more prevalent out west, but the local flood response plans. Know that you do have with emergency management, with the local emergency management, they have contingencies in place, but a lot of that is probably more driven around your emergency operation or emergency action operations plans for these dams. It's important, it's actually a requirement. If it's category 1 dam, they must have an EAP and have an operation plan. One thing I'll say in conclusion on this is we learned a good lesson that day, because when we showed out at Yellow River Dam number 15 and brought the emergency action plan out with us, it was in a 3-ring binder with paper, and that doesn't hold up really well in a storm. I know now you'd have it on a tablet or something like that, but back then it was in a binder and the paper just kind of melted away. So with that, I believe we conclude and can go to the question.
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna launch the poll now. So if you want to receive 1 hour of CFM continuing education credit, please answer the poll question. Answer the poll question using the buttons in the pop-up on the screen. If it does not appear for you, please check the chat. I'm just going to give a minute or 2 for everyone to review and answer the question. All right, I'm going to close the poll now. And 100% on false, which is the correct answer. And then I'm going to hand it back to Emily. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jill Moon, for that very informative webinar. I hope everyone has enjoyed the presentation as much as I have. We will keep the chat open for any questions, so please drop them in along with your email so that we may follow up with you. Please mark March 18th from 12 to 1 on your calendar for our next Lunch and Learn webinar. Del Schwalz will be presenting on the GAFM ASFPM Foundation's Elevation Certificate Guidebook. Please make note of the registration link for the next webinar and the survey link in the chat and on the screen. Again, we appreciate you completing the survey so that we may improve these webinars. We are offering 1 hour of continuing education credit for today's session, available only to certified floodplain managers that have completed the polling questions and provide their name and email in the chat now. A copy of the presentation will be emailed to all attendees. If you're requesting continuing education credits, those certificates will be emailed separately. Once more, our next Lunch and Learn is scheduled for March 18th, so be on the lookout for that invitation. And with that, thank you again for attending today's event. For those who don't have any other questions, this does end our Lunch and Learn webinar. Hope everybody attends GAFM. Thank you.